Your brain treats your future self like a stranger. This is not a metaphor. This is what happens in your brain when you think about who you will become. On a neural level, when you imagine yourself 10 years from now, the same region of your brain lights up as when you think about a complete stranger. If your brain considers your future self as a stranger, then it has no more reason to make sacrifices for that person than it would to give money to someone you have never met. This single neurological fact explains why you procrastinate, why you struggle to save money, why you avoid exercise, and why change feels so impossibly hard after 40. In the first video, we talked about why so many people over 40 feel stuck, even when they want change and even when they are capable of more. We explored the stuck loop cycle and how the brain repeats old patterns to protect us from uncertainty. In the second video, we went deeper into identity and talked about identity lag, which happens when your life has changed, but your brain is still operating from an outdated version of who you are. In this video, I want to talk about what might be the most important discovery in behavioral psychology in the last 20 years, and why your relationship with your future self determines whether you stay stuck or move forward. I am speaking about this as someone who is actively working through it. I am not presenting this as someone who has built the perfect relationship with my future self. I am sharing what I am learning as I redesign my life after 40, especially as I try to build more freedom without overwhelming my nervous system. Most people imagine their future self as a destination. They picture a version of themselves who is calmer, more confident, healthier, more successful, or more free. That image can feel inspiring at first, but over time it often becomes discouraging. The gap between who you are now and who you think you should be can start to feel overwhelming. When you imagine your future self, your prefrontal cortex, the smart part of your brain that handles executive function and scenario planning, actually shuts down. When you think about yourself in the present, a region of the brain called the medial prefrontal cortex powers up. When you think about other people, it powers down. When you think about your future self, it powers down in exactly the same way. This is why the future self stops motivating you and starts intimidating you. Instead of pulling you forward, it makes your nervous system retreat. This is especially true after 40, when the brain is already more sensitive to risk and uncertainty. Your brain does not move toward abstract ideals. It moves toward safety and familiarity. It moves toward what it can predict. When your future self feels too different from your current self, your nervous system treats that future as a threat instead of a guide. This is why so many people over 40 say they know what they want, but they cannot seem to act on it. The future they are aiming for feels disconnected from who they believe they are. Their old identity is still running the show. For me, this showed up very clearly when I thought about creating a different kind of life. I wanted more time and more freedom from corporate constraints. I could picture a future where I was doing work that felt meaningful and self-directed, but whenever I thought too far ahead, my anxiety spiked. The problem was not the vision itself. The problem was the distance. My nervous system could not bridge the gap between my current identity and the future I was imagining. It felt unrealistic and unsafe. And now I understand why. My brain was literally treating that future version of me as if it were a different person, someone I had never met and had no emotional connection to. Researchers call this temporal discounting. People value immediate gains over future gains because, on a neurological level, we feel more connected to our potential self of 1 year from now than our potential self of 10 years from now. The more distant the future, the more of a stranger that future self becomes. Studies show that the more your brain treats your future self like a stranger, the less self-control you exhibit today. You procrastinate more, you exercise less, you put away less money for retirement, and you give up sooner in the face of frustration or temporary pain. This is not a character flaw. This is your neurobiology working against you. But here is the remarkable part. This disconnect is not permanent. It can be changed. When you practice imagining your future self clearly and repeatedly, your brain physically changes. The parts of your brain that used to treat your future self like a stranger start treating that future version of you like someone you actually know. The gap closes, the distance shrinks. Your future self becomes part of your identity, not separate from it. What helped me was learning to think about the future differently. Instead of asking myself who I wanted to become, I started asking what kind of person I was becoming next. That shift may sound small, but it made a big difference. Your brain does not need a dramatic future. It needs a believable one. It needs a future that feels like a continuation, not a rupture. When the future feels reachable, the nervous system relaxes enough to allow action. This is where the idea of the future self becomes useful, but only if it is grounded. A useful future self is not a fantasy version of you. It is not someone living in a different city with a different body and a different life. It is a slightly evolved version of who you already are. A useful future self is someone who behaves just a little differently in moments that matter. They make slightly different choices. They respond to discomfort with a bit more awareness. They take small actions even when they feel uncertain. For me, my future self is not someone who has everything figured out. It is someone who is willing to tolerate a little discomfort in exchange for growth. It is someone who notices anxiety without letting it dictate every decision. It is someone who chooses progress over perfection. When I frame my future self this way, my nervous system does not panic. It does not feel like I am abandoning who I am. It feels like I am expanding. When the future self shares similarities with the present self, when it is viewed in vivid and realistic terms, and when it is seen in a positive light, people are more willing to make choices today that may benefit them at some point in the years to come. One of the biggest mistakes people make is trying to use motivation to override old patterns. Motivation is unreliable, especially after 40. What actually changes behavior is what researchers call future self-continuity. Future self-continuity is the degree to which you perceive your present self as continuous with your future self, and it predicts everything from how much money you save to how well you stick to long-term goals. In one study, researchers showed people age-progressed images of their own faces, realistic pictures of what they would look like at age 68 or 70. Those who interacted with their aged avatars later chose to allocate more money toward retirement savings than those who viewed their current appearance. When the future self becomes concrete and emotionally vivid, long-term goals stop feeling abstract and start feeling like caring for someone real. This is identity-aligned action. It means acting in a way that is consistent with the person you are becoming, not the person you wish you already were. It means choosing actions that your nervous system can tolerate while still nudging you forward. This is where small actions matter again. Your brain updates its identity model through experience, not intention. Every time you take a small action aligned with your future self, you give your brain new evidence about who you are. For example, when I work on my side business for a short, defined amount of time, I am not just making progress on a project. I am teaching my nervous system that I am someone who can engage with uncertainty and survive it. That lesson is more important than the task itself. Over time, these small actions accumulate. The future self stops feeling abstract and starts feeling familiar. When familiarity increases, resistance decreases. This is how old patterns loosen their grip. It is also important to understand that your future self is not something you chase. It is something you practice. You practice being your future self in moments, not all at once. This practice requires patience. It also requires compassion. You will not act like your future self all the time. Old patterns will still show up. Anxiety will still arise. That does not mean you are failing, it means you are learning. One of the most helpful questions I ask myself now is this: what would my future self do in this moment, given my current capacity? This question keeps me honest. It prevents unrealistic expectations. It helps me choose actions that stretch me without overwhelming me. Your future self does not demand perfection. Your future self asks for consistency. It asks for small, repeated actions that slowly shift your internal baseline. This approach is especially important if you live with anxiety, chronic stress, trauma, or ADHD. Your nervous system needs trust, not pressure. The more you respect its limits while gently expanding them, the more progress you will make. Another important shift is learning to relate to time differently. After 40, time often feels compressed. People feel like they are running out of it. That pressure can trigger panic and paralysis. The degree to which an individual feels disconnected from his or her future self correlates with the degree to which that individual discounts future rewards. The more distant your future self feels, the harder it becomes to make choices that benefit that person. The truth is that sustainable change does not require urgency, it requires direction. When you orient yourself toward your future self through small actions, time becomes an ally instead of an enemy. You are no longer racing toward a deadline. You are building momentum. This is not about reinventing yourself overnight. It is about becoming someone new through lived experience. That process cannot be rushed, and it does not need to be. If you feel stuck right now, it does not mean you lack vision. It means your nervous system does not yet trust the future you are imagining. Your job is not to convince it with words. Your job is to show it through action. As you continue this process, your old patterns will not disappear immediately. They will gradually lose authority. They will stop running your life by default. That is what real change looks like after 40. It is quieter and slower than we expect, but it is also deeper and more sustainable. If you are over 40 and you are trying to rewire old patterns and move toward a life that fits who you are now, this is exactly the work I am doing as well. If you want to keep exploring this together, I invite you to subscribe and follow along. In the next video, we will talk about how to design your environment and routines so they support your future self instead of reinforcing old patterns.